One thing that drives me crazy, and I was guilty of it in my first few books, and all this time I have never had an editor point it out. Once I realized it, it absolutely drives me bonkers now. Passive voice. And
Yep.
does that drive you crazy in books?
It does drive me crazy. Yes, and the big for me as a journalist, the biggest problem with passive voice is that it's 10 words where one word would do the trick. So
Yes.
and we don't have that kind of space in the magazine or in the newspaper. We are fighting for every little bit of space we can get. We
Yes.
do not have time for the passive voice. And I think it's the same thing in fiction. You have this impression that it's an 80,000 word book. You have all this time, you have all this space. No, you don't. Every word had better do something for you.
Welcome to the Bookish Introverts Podcast. Join host Amazon bestselling author Brett Nelson and avid reader Melanie Dyer as they dive in to review books they've read, then chat with the amazing authors behind them. Quiet minds, big bookshelves. You don't want to miss it.
Hey everyone, it's Brett, and I am so excited to have a fellow author on the show with me today. She's an author, she's a journalist, and she's a podcaster. She's written 5 young adult novels as well as 2 short stories. She's published in the Wall Street Journal and the Air Force Museum Fringe Journal. She was a national finalist in the Realm Awards and has won several broadcasting awards. So, Lauren Smyth, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's so good to have you. So we're here basically today to talk about her book, WarSafe. If you go out and look for her books on Amazon or wherever, just know that her name is spelled Smyth, S-M-Y-T-H. It's not the usual S-M-I-T-H. So we get into the book, though, Lauren. One of the first things I want to talk to you about is you got your first publishing contract at 13 years old. That is extraordinary. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was a huge surprise for me too. So I'd been writing books for a long time, and most of them were just, little pen things in journals, and I probably have a bunch of them on the shelf behind me still. But they were nothing, that was publishable for sure. And then I finally was like, I'm going to switch to writing on a computer. I'm going to get all fancy because I'm an adult now at 13, and I'm going to write this book on a computer. And that first book was the longest thing I'd ever written. I think it was about 80,000 words, so it was full book length for the first time. And I was like, I don't really know what to do with this. I have this project sitting on my computer. Who do I send it to? What do I do now? And so my parents really encouraged me to try to send it off to a publisher, try to send it off to an agent. And if I remember correctly, I sent it to one agent and one publisher. The agent turned me down. He is now my agent. And the publisher accepted me. So I signed with Ambassador International just a few days before my 14th birthday. And then that book, Stories of the Night, came out when I was 14.
Wow, that is amazing. For people that maybe have younger kids, is that book still available?
It is still available. Yep, it's called Stories of the Night.
And tell us a little bit about that one.
Mm-hmm. So at the time when I was writing that book, I had just started working with this group called the Civil Air Patrol. And for those not familiar, it's kind of like junior ROTC. So you go and you usually get trained how to fly, but it's kind of a military-esque organization for kids. And you take flying lessons, and they are charged with sometimes going out and helping with search and rescue missions. So if a plane crashes, they don't know where it is, the Civil Air Patrol will be given access to its black box signal, and they'll go out and they'll look for it. So pretty cool and super exciting when you're 13 and you have this kind of built-in sense of everything is a crazy adventure. And so that is what inspired Stories of the Night originally. The main character is a member of this organization, the Civil Air Patrol, and she starts having these dreams that seem to be dreams of the future. And so through the resources she has and the friends she has in Civil Air Patrol and through this military base that they meet on, she kind of starts to explore, hey, what could these dreams mean? What could be the military significance of what I'm seeing?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that is fun. So again, tell them again what the name of that one is.
That one's Stories of the Night.
Stories of the Night. And that's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and anywhere else.
Everywhere else. Okay. I noticed something on your website about Operation 9 and Control. And those are both story-based video games. What's that? Tell us about that.
Yes. So those are also projects from when I was 13 to 16, I think is when I did most of those. And I had a big interest in computer coding because, again, 13-year-old sense of adventure, you want to be a super secret hacker like the guys in, Mission Impossible or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I started teaching myself how to code. And another thing I was interested in at the time, because I'd already written the one book, I was writing a second one. I wanted to think of different ways to tell stories. So just sort of different mediums that I could use. And video games seemed like a really interesting one. Now I have some things that I can do and some things that I definitely cannot do. And one thing I cannot do is art, especially digital art. I can't draw a respectable stick figure. My stick figures look like they were drawn by a 2-year-old. It's bad. It's bad.
I get
it. And so when I was designing this game, I had to come up with something that wasn't super graphics heavy because there's no way I was going to be able to do that. And I stumbled across this medium called visual novels, which is essentially a choose your own adventure game. So they make them as books as well, where you make a choice and you turn to page XYZ, or you make a different choice and you turn to a different page, and the story branches like this. So I did that, except with a video game. And Control was kind of the prototype version of that. It was short by comparison. And then Operation 9 was, I think, 110,000 lines of code for about an 8-hour playthrough.
Wow. So how long did that take to finish?
It took less time than you would probably think. It took, I think, about a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Are those games still available? Are they for sale somewhere or?
I'm going to be totally honest. I actually don't know. My guess is they probably are still available, but I personally have lost access to all of the accounts that they are posted on.
Really?
So I have, yeah. And
So
I'm actually not sure where the source code. I'm not sure where the source code for that game is either. So
I think I clicked on something on your website and I think I saw a purchase button somewhere, but yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is so cool. So basically it tells a story through the video game. Is that kind of what it is? Yeah.
That is kind of what it is, yes. And then as you're playing through the game, the player can make choices that influence the outcome of the game. And nowadays, with all the AI stuff, it would be really interesting to kind of have a branching story that can interact with you too. Like responses really change in depth in response to what you say, or you can say anything you want and it'll come up with some new branch for you. But all of this is coded by hand. So there are very set choices and there are very set paths that the game can go on. But I think there's 4 or 5 different endings.
Oh, okay. But it's still with that sort of game, it almost sounds like it still gives, the people that play it a little bit of ability to get some creative thought going on like what path the decisions you make affect the end result. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of that. And there's also sort of puzzle solving. Can you put the right answer in? Those types of things.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that sounds fun. If anybody's interested in that, I think I saw it on her website. Hopefully, if anybody buys it, you'll get the money off of it since it's been a while. But
there you go. So, I guess I'll find out too. I'm learning something on this podcast.
Well, hey, see, this podcast is good for something. When did you know that you wanted to start writing? Tell us a little bit about your path to writing. You got your first contract at 13, which tells me you probably started writing way before that.
Yes. So I am a military kid, hence the involvement with Civil Air Patrol. And for a while, we were living on Edwards Air Force Base. And Edwards Air Force Base is out in California in the Mojave Desert. So it's a very picturesque scenery, and it's very weird. It's this flat dirt with these weird-looking cacti poking up out of it. There's bobcats, there's snakes, there's owls that live in the ground. The dust is poisonous if you breathe it in. So there's just all these, it's like a different world. And it was very inspiring to me as a young person to go, okay, I'm living this really strange experience. I want to write about it so that I don't forget about it, but I also want to write about it so that all the friends I've left behind from all of our moves can kind of know what's going on. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And so that I think sort of inspired me a little bit at the beginning, but more specifically on that Air Force base, I had a group of friends and we lived near a golf course and we had big imaginations. And so we imagined that the hill on this golf course was a secret fort and there was somebody living under the hill who was trying to take over the Air Force base. And he did all this scheming and he left secret messages on the golf course with golf balls, which obviously didn't come from the golf course because that would be way too easy. The secret messages, And so we did all of this digging around and we had these notebooks where we would write down our clues. And we would gather all this evidence and we would try to write stories that combined the evidence all together into one coherent plot.
Yes.
And some of these stories ended up being quite elaborate and quite long, actually. And so I would say those were my very first attempts at writing a book. And I was like, this is kind of fun. I can incorporate some
Yeah.
real life, I can incorporate some imagination, and come up with this product that at least we enjoyed reading. I don't know if I would enjoy it now, or maybe I would enjoy it for different reasons.
Yeah.
But that was kind of my first experience with it. And I loved that. And that's what got me into writing more of the sort of journal stories with a pencil and paper. And then when I
Mhm.
was 10, I was deemed old enough to inherit the family laptop. And so I kept
Woo.
writing, and there you go.
There you go. That's how it all started. I always love, that's one of the questions I ask a lot on this podcast. As an author myself, it is so fun to hear like how people got started, and a lot of the people that I've talked to, it's really interesting that most authors, they knew they wanted to write early on in their life. And so it's almost like there's something in your brain that early on, that's what you want to do. And I guess maybe it's the same for anyone that has a passion for anything they do. They just, for some reason, that sort of is in your mind at an early age. And I think that's so interesting.
That's a really good point. I think I've seen that trend too, where people just know very early on that this is kind of what they're meant to do. I do think for me, writing is very much a calling. It's something that,
Mhm.
I'm Christian, and I believe that God has kind of told me this is your path in life. So you better get started on it early.
Exactly. And that's my regret as an author, that I didn't get started early. I probably started in my late 30s. That's one of my regrets. So, yes, if you have a passion for something, don't wait. It may take you a while to get to where you want to be, but start cultivating that passion early. So you were a national semifinalist in the Realm Awards. Which book was that?
That was actually not for a book. That was for one of my short stories.
Oh,
And
okay.
that was for the short story that was published in the Into the Unknown anthology.
Oh, okay. And the Realm Awards is that's for sci-fi type books. Is that right? I've heard of the
Yeah,
Realm Awards.
I think they call it a speculative fiction contest. So that
Yeah.
includes fantasy, sci-fi, horror, supernatural
Oh,
type of
okay.
books. So anything
Okay.
kind of in that very far outside the realm of real life.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And so you were a national finalist about that. You won national first place in the collegiate broadcasters in the best newscast. So I think from talking before the podcast, you had said that part of kind of your quote unquote day job is you're a journalist. So kind of tell us what you do when you're not writing.
Yes. So I have a normal 9 to 5 when I'm not writing, which is also a writing job. So there's a lot of overlap there. But I'm a
Yeah.
journalist for World News Group. They have a magazine, a kids TV show, a kids magazine, an adult podcast, and then an adult. Actually, I don't think we do much adult video, but we have all of these different mediums. We have video, audio, print, and we do some breaking news, and we do some very long form expository news.
Oh,
And I
okay.
am on a fellowship program with the magazine. And as the very first fellow, my job is essentially to make the fellowship program and then also to do journalism across all the departments. So my specialty is economics. So I kind of just go where I'm called to do economic stories. But my other specialty is broadcast. So I do lots of radio, lots of video, and then some print writing as well.
Oh, okay. So even on your 9 to 5 day job, you've got a real artsy kind of job, it sounds like.
Oh, yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I love that type of journalism too, where it's not just, you run to the scene and you write something as fast as humanly possible, but you really take a deep
Yeah.
dive into it because there's so much room for getting to know people and for that kind of creativity that comes with that type of writing.
Do you get to like interview people and talk to people on
All the
your
time.
job all the
All
time?
the time.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. That's one of the fun things on this podcast. I love talking to people and hearing their stories. There's some interesting people out there that nobody knows about. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's kind of fun to bring some of those people out. So now, are you indie published or are you traditional published?
Have done both, actually.
Okay.
So my first 3 books are indie publishing, and then my second 2, or my last 2, are traditionally published.
Oh, okay. Okay. Tell us what you see as some of the biggest hurdles that authors face today. Is there anything that you've noticed in your career of writing that you see as specific hurdles?
I'm sure Lots of people talk about this on the podcast, so I may just be another voice complaining about this issue. But I think the biggest problem today, or the biggest change that the increase in methods of publishing has brought to the industry, is simply that there are now so many books. I mean, there are so many books. Amazon has millions and millions of books.
Yes.
And from a reader's perspective, it can be hard to distinguish, okay, what's a really good book, but it just doesn't have that many reviews, versus, what's maybe not such a good book, but it has a ton of reviews just because a ton of people have read it.
Yes.
So it's very hard to stand out in the industry. Really, whether you're traditionally published or indie published, both come with their own set of challenges. Traditional publishing could be a little bit easier because the publishers already have relationships with bookstores and with distributors. But it can still be hard. There are plenty of traditionally published books that never sell more than 2,000 copies.
It's true.
And so, I would say the biggest problem is just simply, saying, hey, I have this product. I know readers will like it, but where is my reader base?
Yeah. It is so hard to find your reader. Sometimes as authors, it feels like you're screaming into the void. It really can. But I've actually done a little bit of research on what you just said. And it really is true. Most authors just want to be traditionally published. The average traditionally published book sells 2,000 to 3,000 copies, if even. That's astounding to me. When I think of traditionally published books, I think of James Patterson, I think of Stephen King, I think of Mary Higgins Clark, these huge powerhouses. That's not, they're kind of an anomaly. These publishing companies, they make all their money off of the minority of their authors. Most of them are just like us, and they're lucky if they sell 2,000 or 3,000 books a year. Like that's, or right, not even really a year in their lifetime. That's shocking.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't really know yet what we do about it. I think that sites like Goodreads, Fable, those websites where readers can say, hey, I know not a lot of people know about this book, but I loved it and I think you should read it. Those websites are a huge blessing for authors. They help weed out, some of the really good books from some of the books that maybe aren't landing with the correct audience. But even so, I think the publicity is really difficult. And in my mind, I don't see an easy solution for that. I think, some people kind of stumble upon their readership and some people don't. And that's, it's always been difficult like that, but I do think it's gotten more difficult in recent years. The internet was great at first if you were one of the early adopters, but now there's so much content.
There's so much to choose from, you don't know where to start.
Right.
It's that way with books. It's the way with the internet. Yeah. So it's interesting that you brought that up. I'm going to speak at a school in a couple of weeks. And so I'm trying to come up with some, and I read that just in the last couple of weeks, and that shocked me. That taught me something. All right. So how about we transition into the book? Again, for those of you that are listening, it's Lauren Smyth, Smyth, and the book is called WarSafe. I'm going to ask you kind of a few little quick questions about it, and then we're going to just let you loose. We're not going to give any spoilers for those of you that are listening. We're not going to give any spoilers. We just want Lauren to tell us enough about it that it sort of whets your appetite and wants you to run out and buy it. So in the book, it's sort of a sci-fi. It's centered around this game. This game is called WarSafe. And there are characters called mercenaries. Tell us what mercenaries are.
Yes. So the book is kind of told from two different perspectives. So there's the normal modern day Seattle. Not much has changed about modern day Seattle. People are still drinking coffee and it's still raining a lot. That's Seattle. And then there's this island. And it's not clear where this island is. It's somewhere. And there's some weird things about this island. There are a couple weird things. One is that the plants are evergreen. There's never any changes to the weather. The plants never die. It just continues on in this sort of stasis state indefinitely. Uh-huh. And then the other thing that's weird about it is right in the center of the island, there's this house. And this house has 8 floors. And inside of this house, on the bottom floor, is where the mercenaries live. And the mercenaries have a reputation around the village for being kind of violent, kind of unpredictable, prone to these sort of destabilizing episodes where they just go crazy and kind of lose their minds. And everybody knows that they live inside this house, that they're doing something in the house that's kind of provoking these manic episodes, but nobody really knows what it is. So that's the mercenaries. They're these very mysterious characters, and they tend to be pretty quiet and keep to themselves, with few exceptions.
If I was in your book, I would be a mercenary. I like to just stick to myself.
There you go. You'd be able to read, do a lot of reading, and just kind of
Yes,
life would
that's
be
the
pretty good, I
perfect
gotta
life.
say.
I'm
There you
telling you
go.
that, yeah, perfect life. So tell us about the video game WarSafe. What can you tell us about that?
So I can't tell you too much about it without revealing,
Yes,
a little
this
bit of
is
the
going to be
story. But I will.
tricky.
This is going to be tricky. It was tricky to write the synopsis for this book without giving spoilers away. I remember my publisher and I had a long discussion about, does this count as a spoiler? Does this count as a spoiler? What do you think?
Yeah.
So, but I will do my best here. So, WarSafe is a video game that's being developed by this company in Seattle. So it's a normal video game company. They develop Call of Duty style games, and
Mhm.
WarSafe is a game where um, the player controls a character, and they have a lot of control over the character. It's supposed to be a hyper realistic game with little facial expressions, sort of little inconsistencies, kind of like you would face in real life if you were trying to play through this game. And the goal is to sneak past these guards who are guarding this building. You're trying to get past them and get to the top floor. And then you start over again at the bottom, but you increase in levels and you increase in your access to weaponry as you play through the game. And
Mhm.
it's kind of iterative in the sense that it can create new levels for you as you progress up through the game. So and some of the main characters are working on developing this video game. That's kind of their life project. But the company the company that's producing WarSafe has a pretty big secret in the background, and they discover this, and that is kind of the catalyst for the whole rest of the book.
Yeah. I'm telling you, this is a fun book. I'm not usually a YA reader, but this was a fun book. I guess the target audience is young adult, but I will say, if there are any listeners out there who are readers that enjoy YA, even if you don't think you enjoy YA, I think you would enjoy this book. It really was a fun book. This is a prime example. Sometimes branch out into what you don't think you like, because you just might be surprised. So who's the alliance in the book?
Yes. So there's this supranational organization that's called SAFE. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't know what that stands for. So I'm really glad we're calling it the Alliance. It stands
Yeah,
for Strategic Alliance of something.
yeah.
But the acronym is SAFE. And this organization is essentially just a rule setting body for lots of different countries. So in my head, it's kind of modeled off the European Union in
Hmm.
just how it works. But it's the European gone way down this road of wanting to control all of the countries that are part of it.
Yeah.
So and yes, it actually didn't exist in the first draft of the book. It was something that my editors and I kind of talked through together, because there's this sort of sense in the background of the book that there are a lot of weird laws. Like, for example, radio communication has been banned for reasons of
Hmm.
safety, and a few things like that that you just kind of wouldn't maybe think of as being part of the modern world as we know it. And so this organization helps kind of explain where some of those laws came from and where some of this persistent theme of seeking safety has come from.
Hmm. Okay, and that was going to be my next question. For those that may be interested in the book, what are some of the main themes of the book that readers might expect to come across?
Yeah. So I think the biggest one is this theme of sacrifice, kind of the trolley problem from classic philosophy, which is
Hmm.
if you have a train that's coming to a split in the tracks, and the train is going to run over three people, and you could pull a lever to cause it to only run over one person, would you pull that lever? Kind of, is it possible to compare the value of multiple lives versus one life? Or are all lives infinitely valuable? And are you comparing something that just can't be compared?
Yeah.
And and I think characters inside the book take different perspectives on this issue. It's not like the book is trying to shove down your throat, oh, life is
Hmm.
infinitely valuable and you must think this, otherwise none of the book will make sense to you. Characters do take totally different perspectives on this, and it was
Yes.
fun in my mind to work out, what are the implications of those beliefs, and what do I believe about the world, and what might readers who come to this book think about the world. So that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
There's also a big theme of whether self-sacrifice can be forced. So, if you know that doing something that will harm others could save the rest of the world, is that okay? Is that not okay? Do you tell them the truth? Do you let them choose, knowing that they might say no? Kind of, what does
Yeah.
that look like? Those are big themes in it. There's definitely also a theme of kind of choosing safety over taking risks that may be, super beneficial. That's definitely a theme. And all of that, I think, is under a little bit of a theme of we need to be really careful what we use technology to do.
Yeah.
So I worried when I first wrote this book that it could be perceived as, oh, you shouldn't play violent video games, because that's a very surface level interpretation that you could maybe
Yeah.
walk away with. But that's not true, because I was, those games, I've played some of them and they inspired this book. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying, don't play video games. Video games are so terrible. That's a very surface level interpretation. And I think that's
Yeah.
not what I was going for. But the care of technology, what are we doing with it, what stories are we telling with it, that I think is there and is very important too.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. There's this big debate sometimes in Christian fiction because there are people that if it doesn't scream Jesus on every page, you're a fraud. I kind of fall on the opposite end of the spectrum. I like books that have very heavy Christian themes, but honestly, I kind of prefer books that are more subtle. Where do you think your book falls in that?
So in my mind, whenever you have characters who are facing imminent death, religion is going to come up as a problem for them.
For
And if
sure.
they
Yeah.
if they never think about that, if they never address what's about to happen to me, then in my mind that's unrealistic. And so Christianity comes into the book in that regard, where these characters, they're in imminent danger, something terrible could happen to them at any moment, and their minds are going straight to, okay, what happens if I die? And
Yeah.
Christianity comes up in that context because we have one character who's a very strong Christian for the entire book, and he'll kind of mention this confidence that he has that he's going to be fine no matter what happens. And there are other characters who aren't, but they're kind of attracted to his sense of certainty. And so that is what sparks the discussion in the book. Again, what I really wanted to do with WarSafe was not say, hey, you must believe this way. Otherwise, the
Yeah.
book isn't going to make sense. Otherwise, your life isn't going to make sense. Like, this is what you have to believe to get through this. I wanted to raise the question for readers. I wanted readers to think about this and also to kind of be willing to let, religious elements enter the story and be a natural part of the story without feeling
Yeah.
like it's forced in.
Yes. That's the kind of Christian fiction I like because I know as you're probably are you're probably an avid reader too. I'm a very avid reader. You can tell books that have had Christian themes pushed into it and it's forced, it doesn't feel natural. And that's one thing I really liked about your book. It was not like that. It sort of flowed naturally and it wasn't in your face. And that's really the kind of Christian fiction that I prefer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think too that Christians are, when we're putting our faith into our work, we're called to excel at that work as best as we can. And,
For sure.
sometimes it's not going to work. Sometimes we're not going to excel at our work, but we are called to really put that effort in. And I think that is a hallmark of Christian fiction too. It needs to
Yes.
be good. And that
Yeah.
is a good representative of Christ too, because, if we really believe that God created this whole world that we're in, then our creative spirit should reflect God's creative spirit in just
Exactly.
simply writing a good piece of fiction.
Yes. Because as Christians writing Christian fiction, we're representing him. And so when we represent him, just as we would do if we walked into a room full of people, we want to do our best to reflect our relationship with him and reflect the best of him. We also want to do that in our Christian fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So,
For
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. I know we've talked about a lot so far. So, I'm going to let you loose. Is there anything about the book that you kind of want to grow into that we haven't hit on so far?
That's a good question. I think one thing that's unique about WarSafe, and one thing that some readers really love and some readers get confused by, is the fact that it's a multi POV book. So
Yes.
you have one character who's talking in first person, and you have several characters who are talking in third person. And
Hmm.
it was funny, the difference in reaction to that. Some readers were like, "This is so cool! I've not seen this before," and other readers were like, "I cannot follow what's happening at all."
Yeah.
So I don't know if those are totally different reading styles or what, but it's interesting. I will say that. Whether you find it confusing or not, it's at least interesting. And it is something about WarSafe that's a little bit different. And it's actually, because of the mixed response to it, it's not something I've tried again. So maybe
Really?
it'll come back into my work later. But yeah, I've not written another book with that as the narration style.
So, what
So
made you choose that narration style? Did you just want to try something different?
Well, the book really does lend itself to that, and I
It
honestly
really
don't know
does.
if there would be another way to write it because you have the
Yeah.
two parallel storylines. You have everything that's going on the island, and you have everything that's going on in Seattle. And those two storylines don't collide for a significant
Yeah.
portion of the book. And so, if you want to know that background, there's really no other way to do it, I don't
Yeah.
think.
You
I've
just
thought about
did
that
what you
many
had to
times.
do.
Like, yeah, I've thought about that many times. Would I change the way I wrote it? But I don't. I've not come up with a solution that's any better. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, you did a great job with what to me was a complex story. Sometimes Christian fiction can be a little bit fluffy and predictable. So I love finding stories that aren't. I feel like Christian fiction should be complex, and I wish there was more of that. So thank you for writing a book that stood out as different in the void of Christian fiction.
well, thank you. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And I totally agree because, real life is complex and real life is so interesting. I think this
Yeah.
is something that a journalism background has given me. It's just an appreciation for how strange everyday normal life is. There's nothing everyday or normal about it. And so when you can pull those stories out and kind of show these are all the layers that went into this seemingly simple thing, that's
Yeah.
so fun in both fiction and in real life.
I mean, how boring would life be if it was just boring and predictable all the time?
Right.
The complexities of life, even though sometimes we don't like the things we go through and the things we endure, it really does color and season life. I'm in a like a Christian fiction group on Facebook, and this topic actually comes up a lot in the group where people are talking about what they like, because a lot of people have said Christian fiction, sometimes it's bland, sometimes it's predictable, and a lot of people say, well, I like that because my life is so crazy. I don't want crazy in a book. But I'm just the total opposite. I'm like, throw all the weird stuff at me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where do you fall on that? What do you like to read?
I love sci-fi. I love
Do you?
unpredictable sci-fi. I love sci-fi that makes me go, I would never have seen that coming. Never would have thought of
Yeah.
that. Because, I think and it is a little bit of the same. I do like the escapism aspect of it,
Uh-huh.
but I like it to take me further than my real life is taking me. So I
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
agree. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, but is there anything else you want to mention about the book before we start wrapping this up?
I I would say the only other interesting thing in the production of that book was how long it took to go to print. I had the idea for the book, I believe, senior year of high school, and it came out my senior year of college. So I think the biggest lesson I learned from the publication of WarSafe is just be patient. Just be patient, and it will all be okay.
And that is
But
so hard to
publishing
do
is
as an author.
it's so hard. It's
It
so hard. But
is.
publishing is such a long process, and sometimes you
It
just
is.
have to wait for the wheels to turn.
Yeah. Now, how long did it take you to write the book once you had the concept in mind? How long did that take?
Not super long. It took about a year, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is that long for you, or what's your average for a book?
Yeah, I would say from what I've heard other authors say, and I don't know how this compares to the people that you've talked to, but for me that seems like a fairly short amount of time. I think
Hmm.
most books take kind of 2 to 3 years to write. I tend to write pretty fast, and when I get an idea that's very clear in my mind where I want it to go, then I just write it quickly. And the first draft is going to be terrible because it was written quickly. But then you
Yes.
go back and kind of refine. And the refining process took maybe a little bit longer, but I really think the whole project was done in about a year, which is
Oh,
that's
okay.
fairly fast for me too. I tend to take about 2 years per project.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, most of the authors that I've talked to, the biggest majority of them are, of course, Christian fiction authors. Most authors that I've talked to usually crank out their books in 5 to 6 months. So,
Wow, that's
yeah.
crazy fast.
Yeah. And I'm talking not just lesser known indie authors. I collaborate a lot with Baker Publishing, and those are big name authors in Christian fiction. And yeah, a lot of authors they write their books in less than a year. So
Wow. All right, I got a
yeah,
new goal going then.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I always say, kind of going back to what we said earlier, your first draft, you're laying the bones down in your book. You're putting the flesh around your bones in the editing after you write it. The funny thing is, I've got a book coming out February 3rd. My eighth book comes out February 3rd. It
Congratulations.
usually, oh, thank you. It usually takes me anywhere from 8 months to a year to write a book. So the book that's coming out in February, I wrote the whole book in like a month and a half.
Wow.
That's the fastest I have ever written a book. It'll probably never happen again. I don't recommend it, but yeah.
I don't think I'll ever meet that benchmark, but now I have a new goal.
Yeah,
I'm going
you
to give
have a
it a
new
go.
goal. Yeah, but when I go to schools and talk locally, and that's one thing I always drill. And we have a lot of authors, aspiring authors, and even authors that are published that listen to the podcast. And that's what I always tell people. We've all heard the saying, comparison is the thief of joy. And we can use other people's experiences to sort of build upon what we do. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to do what works for you. It may take me, 8 months to a year. It may take you a year to 2 years to write a book. And if it takes you 2 or 3 years, Mr. Author, Mr. or Miss Author that's listening, that's all right. You
Oh,
do
yeah.
it at your pace, because
Yes.
ultimately you have to do what works for you and for your creative style.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite authors, I talked to her, and it was Kathy McCrum, who wrote the Recorder, Children of the Consortium series. The first book is Recorder. And I think she said the first book took 8 years to write. And
Wow.
that's perfectly fine. It's an
Yeah.
incredibly beautiful book. It's amazing. It's one of my favorite books of all time. So,
Yeah.
I agree with exactly what you just said. Everybody has to move at their own pace. And writing is such a subjective and a personal thing that, if it takes you longer, take that time.
Yeah.
Let it cook.
Because, we got a life outside of writing. Although I have to say, as a writer, do you struggle with, I don't think I could take 8 years to write a book. That would absolutely drive me bonkers. I'm the type that, once I start, I want to get it done. I want to get it done. I've got 1,000,001 stories flopping around in my head. I want to get on to the next one. Do you struggle with that too?
I do. I went through a period of time in senior year of college where I was super busy and didn't have a ton of time to write. And by the end of that, I had 3 simultaneous books that I was trying to write, and that was a catastrophe. That does not work. I don't recommend writing 3 different projects at the same time. To each their own. If you can do it, do it.
But a lot.
Oh, that scrambled my brain for the longest time. And also working in writing and editing books on a freelance basis. I mean, I would have so many different projects open in front of me. It was not sustainable at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do kind of try to do that now. I try to put the little bow and end projects, be done with them, and so that I can go and start the next one. Because I'm exactly like you. I have all kinds of ideas and stories that I want to tell, but I have learned for my personality type, I must write one at a time. Otherwise, it just becomes this whole
It gets
thing.
jumbled. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I do have 3 different books going right now. I have one that's the main focus, but I tend to like to have at least a second one going, because, and I'm sure it probably happens to you too. Do you ever just have times when you're like, I'm so sick of this story? And sometimes you get or at least I do. Sometimes I get to where I cannot write anymore in this book. And I have found if I switch over to book number 2, write for a week, get out of that story, when I go back to it, it's like a vacation for my mind. And so that's kind of how my mind works.
That's a really good point. And I think that's definitely an author personality thing, because when I switch back and forth between books, I mix them up. I make glaring errors in both of them at the same time. Like, for example, recently I was going back and I was doing edits on my 5th book, which comes out in May. And I am working on this other project at the same time. And the other project is written in first person present tense.
Oh.
And my 5th book that comes out in May is written in first person past tense.
Yeah.
And so my poor proofreader had to go through and look at all the edits I made, because half of them were in present tense when they weren't supposed to be. And then when I went back to writing the next manuscript I'm working on, half of that was in past tense. So I just had everything totally scrambled. So I admire and I really like that idea of being able to switch between projects, but man, my brain won't do it.
You won't do it, especially for someone like you that different books are in different POVs. I tend to stick to third person POV in my books, so I don't have that rewiring of the brain of, okay, I'm in this book, so I gotta. Honestly, I don't know how you do that.
I don't. That really is the best answer I have. I don't.
Thank goodness for editors that help us keep all that stuff straight.
Oh yeah. Yes. That's, yeah. My editors have saved me more times than I can count.
Yes. Behind every great book is a great editor.
Oh, yeah. Or
They're
three
the
great editors sometimes.
for sure. Yeah. They are definitely the unsung heroes of a novel. That is for sure. I noticed on your website that you also do editing services. So you do editing on the side for other authors. Tell us a little bit about that.
I do, yes. It is much easier sometimes to go to someone else's manuscript that you've never seen before, and then you kind of start catching those past present inconsistencies and all those types of things. But
Yeah.
I mostly edit for a company called Post Hill Press. They're out of
Okay.
Nashville. They have a lot of freelance editors who do developmental editing, copy editing, and then proofreading for them, and sometimes different combinations of those things. So it's really fun because it's quite the mix of genres that I get. The last book I
Oh.
edited was sort of a mafia fiction type of book. And then, a few books back, it was political fiction, some historical fiction, some political nonfiction, some historical nonfiction. So it's a really, really good mixture. Kind of keeps me on my toes and gives me ideas for things that would be fun for me to write later. But has also
Yeah.
really tuned my attention to detail. No comma escapes me now. And it took 3 or 4 books of I had to read it twice to make sure I'd caught everything. Now it's much faster, and now I only have to read it once. So
Oh.
it is kind of funny how your brain just attunes to those tiny little details. But by nature, I'm not a detail-oriented person. I still clearly remember my first economics exam in college when I did everything right except I added 3 plus 2 and got 6, as
Yeah.
one does. So details escape me, and editing has actually been really good practice for just zoning in on those details and making sure, that I actually catch everything.
So you kind of contract through this company? You're like a contractor with them?
Yes, I do that, and then I do other projects on the side too.
Oh,
I
okay.
work freelance for other people as well, but most of my work comes from this company.
So do you get to choose which projects you're going to edit, or do they just sort of say, "Hey, this one needs to be done. Can you do this one?" How's that work?
It's a little bit of both. So they'll pitch projects to me, and I can say yes or no at that point. They publish good books, though. So for the most part, it's an easy, automatic yes. There will be times when I'm like, I can't finish by this deadline. I'm sorry. Something came up in life and I got to do this instead. And there are some things where my background and my knowledge base just isn't really a good fit for the book. So I don't do a ton of editing of super technical science nonfiction, for example. But they know that too, and they typically just don't send me those projects. So it's a good fit where they know my interests and they know my background and the information that I have, and I kind of know what they're likely to send me. So it's pretty easy for us to reach a good agreement.
Okay. What kind of editing do you do? Do you do developmental or like do you just sort of dabble in them all?
I do developmental editing, copy editing, and proofreading. So developmental editing is more just making sure the story flows, or even the nonfiction, the argument just flows well from beginning to end. And it'll be kind of a bigger picture edit. And actually, those are my favorites because, again, I can do details, but that's a switch I have to turn on as opposed to something that comes naturally. So I love developmental editing. Copy editing is kind of that. It'll check for logical consistency, but it's more just how does this feel when you're reading it? Does it read well? Is it smooth? Are these the right word choices here? And then proofreading is just straight up, I don't touch anything about the book unless it's an error. And I'll go through and make sure spelling is consistent and grammar and all those types of things.
Oh, okay. All right. That sounds interesting. I'm not like a formal editor. Authors make the best editors and proofreaders. So I do sort of beta read, do heavy beta reading for other author friends that I have, and it's so much fun. So as an editor, if you could shout out one particular thing that you notice over and over and over in books that you're like, I wish authors would stop doing this, what would that be?
So I really do not like direct address and switches from past tense to present tense. So I'm trying to think of a way to explain this. It's like you're writing along in the book and you're talking about this character who's had this experience happen. And then all of a sudden you're like, the town that they're living in is exactly like this. And if you go there, then you will see this. And all of a sudden you've broken the fourth wall completely because we were just talking about this character in this fictional world. And now suddenly you're telling something to the reader who's not supposed to exist in this fictional world. And you're telling them that the town is that way. So is it a real town in the real world? Can't stand that. That drives me crazy. And I I see that in almost every fiction book I edit. Somewhere the author will lapse into that direct address present tense.
Okay.
So, and I'm totally guilty of it too. The only reason that I know this is a thing is because my first editor, who's a wonderful, wonderful lady, and I still think about her comments to this day, but my first editor pointed out that I did that. And I started noticing it in other things, started to drive me crazy, and it still drives me crazy, and I will change it to this day. So yes, I recommend if you are writing an entire book in past tense and all of a sudden you see present tense creep in, that's a huge flag. And then if you're writing something other than dialogue and you start to see the word you or we or our, that's also a huge red flag that you're breaking that fourth wall for the reader. And a lot of readers, they won't be able to pinpoint exactly what it is that's making them uncomfortable, but it's a little bit of a uncomfortable, I'm in two worlds at once type of feeling that you get when reading it. So I would say be careful of that. Another hobby horse that I ride way too much is fewer versus less. Fewer and less are not the same thing.
They are not.
You have fewer of some item that you can count, and you have less of some item that you can't count. You have fewer books, but less snow, or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's some good stuff. One thing that drives me crazy, and I was guilty of it in my first few books, and all this time I have never had an editor point it out to me. Once I realized it, it absolutely drives me bonkers now. Passive voice.
Oof, yep.
Does that drive you crazy in books?
It does drive me crazy. Yes, and the big, for me as a journalist, the biggest problem with passive voice is that it's 10 words where one word would do the trick.
Yes.
So, and we don't have that kind of space in the magazine or in the newspaper. We're fighting for every little bit of space we can get. We do not have time for the passive voice. And I think it's the same thing in fiction. You know, you have this impression that it's an 80,000 word book. You have all this time, you have all this space. No, you don't. Every word had better do something for you. And so yes. Oh boy, I could go on this all day.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so funny because up until, and like I said, I'm guilty of it too, especially in my first few books. I'm much more aware of it now. But I can remember in my earlier books, there was just something about it that I just wasn't quite happy with, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And once I learned about passive voice and started cleaning that up, it is amazing how much better my work became just getting rid of passive voice. So that's one thing I tell authors, like as I'm talking to people, if there's one change that you can make in your book, if you can just get rid of passive voice, that's going to make a huge difference in the sound of your work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a good one. And it goes back to George Orwell said this, Strunk and White said this in Elements of Style. But they all say, why use more words when fewer will do?
Yeah.
So I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah.
I wish every first time author could hear that so many times. They should just have that playing in their ears while they're writing. Do not use the passive voice. Do not use the passive voice. Do not use the passive voice.
Yes. Listen to me say that in your sleep so it will get into your mind. Yeah. Yeah. So one more question on editing and then we'll get off this. Have you ever had an instance where you hated the book? How do you edit a book that you are just not enjoying?
Yeah, I have. And sometimes it's topical. Sometimes I just really am not interested in the topic. And it's just not something I know anything about. And sometimes it's that. And there have been books I've edited that I have written a note back to the lead editor and said, hey, I don't think we should publish this. I don't think it's in publishable state. And there's not really anything I can do to fix it. But when I encounter books like that, where it's just, I don't think that this is ready to go to print, I still try to do my absolute best work by the author. Because there are very few books, as long as they're fairly logically consistent, as long as there is a story behind it to be told. If a book has a story, it's not a complete train wreck. You know, it may not be quite ready for the public to see it, but it's not a train wreck. It is a book. It's there and there's something to work with. There's always something to work with. Mm-hmm. And so I just do my best. I clean up. I mean, the easiest thing to do to improve a book like that is to clean up any straight up grammar errors so that it reads smoothly. And then, flag logical inconsistencies and let the author do some of the work. The editor can fix some things, but there are also some things that the author needs to go back and fix themselves. And they'll have a lot more creativity once you point out, hey, I'm seeing something wrong here, they'll have a
Yeah.
lot more of a, oh, well, this is what I meant. And this will
Yeah.
work better in that spot.
Oh,
So let the
interesting.
author do some of the work, clean up the grammar to make it just flow smoothly. And then, don't be afraid to go back and say, hey, I think this needs a pretty significant revision before we can go ahead and print it. That can be hard as an author to hear, but a lot of authors
Yeah.
really appreciate that feedback because they haven't had a third person look at the book yet, and so they don't have that feedback. They've never gotten it before, and actually it's quite helpful to them.
Yeah.
So I would say don't be afraid to be honest with the authors in that situation, but also remember that inside of every book, if there's a story, if there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, there's something there that you can pull out and salvage.
Yeah. That is such good. That's such good advice. What book are you reading now?
I am reading The Strength of the Few by James Islington. It's the sequel to The Will of the Many, which came out last year and was a super popular fantasy book.
Oh, okay. What's a genre that you very rarely read?
Actually, fantasy. I very rarely read fantasy. It takes a really good fantasy book to get me hooked because the learning curve to understand what in the world is going on is so steep for me.
Yeah.
And I have trouble visualizing fantasy in a way that I don't have as much trouble visualizing kind of sci-fi or dystopia or something like that. So, but here I am, and The Strength of the Few is not a small book. It is a good 750-page book. And I'm totally hooked. So maybe I'll change my mind after this. I don't know.
Hey, it may do it. I'm reading 3 different books right now. One of the books I'm reading is The Way of the Kings by Brandon Sanderson. It's my first Brandon Sanderson book. 1,000 pages. It's going to take me till next. I started it in November, and it's going to take me till next Christmas to finish it. But
best wishes for that.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not a fantasy person. A friend of mine, she loves. In fact, she's one of my guest co-hosts. She loves fantasy. I was like, okay, my goal this year is to read a fantasy book and you try something different. And so when I went to the bookstore and bought it, the lady was like, "Oh my goodness, this is such a book! Don't you just love Brandon Sanderson?" I said, "This is my first Brandon Sanderson book." She goes, "Honey, you jumped into the deep end of fantasy with this book." So,
yep. Brandon Sanderson has been on my list for so long, and I just haven't done it yet because they're so big.
They're so long, and especially when you're a writer, it's like reading time is at a premium for us. Do I really want to devote my time to 1,000 pages? So, but I just decided I'm going to do it, and if it takes me a year to read it, so be it. So,
there you go.
So, I'm 400 pages into the 1,000 pages.
Oh boy. Okay, so you're almost halfway through. So I can tell you, just tell me what it says when you're done. Then I'll know too.
I will let you know. If you could go out and have dinner with one person, who would it be? Living or dead?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think one of my all-time favorite authors is Isaac Asimov. So I would probably say Isaac Asimov. And his books appeal to me on several fronts. One is they're really interesting sci-fi, just really interesting thoughts about what the future of the world would look like, and AI and all those types of things. But then the other thing is he had this, I said earlier that econ is kind of my specialty. That's what I studied in college too. And Asimov has this idea that in the future, AI will be able to kind of calculate the ideal prices and quantities of everything. And so it's this idea of scientific socialism is the name of the philosophy. And I would love to pick his brain about that because I can't imagine that working, but I would love to see, why he thought that would work and, what he imagined for that and whether he was inspired by the Soviet Union, which was gaining strength around the time that Asimov was writing. All those types of things I just find absolutely fascinating. So I would love to sit down over a meal with and just pick his brain on kind of how he imagined the world looking,
Wouldn't that
modern
be
day 2026.
amazing? Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah. When did he write? Do you know?
I think he did most of his writing. I don't think he's still alive. He did most of his writing in the 60s, I believe. Maybe a little earlier, 40s, 60s, somewhere in there.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we've already talked about WarSafe. I'm going to mention a couple of your books just for readers, maybe if they want to hear about a couple of your other books. Just if you can, just give us a little short tell us about All That Glows.
Yes, so All That Glows comes out in May from Enclave Publishing, and it is what has happened after the end of the world. So there's this little former military base where all these people are living, and they have a fence because it's a military base around their town. So they've survived after this plague has come and wiped out everybody else on the face of the earth, and they're the only ones left, or so they think, until somebody from outside the fence makes contact with the town.
Oh, that book sounds just up my alley. I'm definitely going to check that one out. That one sounds really cool. I love sort of what's the word, end of the world, dystopia type books. That's my favorite. Yeah.
It's my favorite too. And there's so little of it coming out right now. So All That Glows comes out May of this year.
All right. So everybody be watching for that. With Love from the Past.
Yes. With Love from the Past was the last book I wrote in high school, and it is essentially a crime thriller. So this girl, down on her luck, she wakes up, she's got a job offer from this law enforcement agency, and she doesn't really know why or how that happened, but she takes the job, and on day 3, one of her teammates is found dead. And so she's got these riddles that are getting taped to her door at night that are kind of hinting, hey, maybe this person is the one who killed your teammate. She has no idea who it is until it seems to be someone from her past that she has forgotten.
Oh, okay. Love it. I was going to ask you about Stories of the Night, but we've already talked about that. I was going to ask you about what's coming next on your next book, but you just told us about that. So tell us about your podcast. Do you have a podcast, Grammar Minute? Is that what it's called? I didn't write it down. Okay. Tell us about Grammar Minute. Okay.
Yes. So as you may have noticed, I got very animated when we were talking about common editing mistakes. And Grammar Minute is my outlet for all that animation. It is exactly as advertised. It is 1 minute of a grammar or writing rule that if you follow it, it will make your writing look a lot more polished. And we were talking earlier about how there's just so many books in the world today. If you are an author who is able to use good, clean grammar and sentence structure and basic rules of writing, you're going to stand out from that pile of books. And that's what Grammar Minute is supposed to help you do. So it's very easy to listen to. It's very, very short. 60 seconds at a time, comes out twice a week.
Oh, so it's literally a minute.
It is literally a minute. It is 60 seconds.
If you're a listener who has a short attention span, you could listen to her podcast and still be okay.
There you go. Yep. It is designed for those of us who are running from place to place.
If a minute's all you got, we got a podcast for you.
There you go.
I love that. Where can listeners go? Is it on all the podcast platforms?
It's on all the podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts.
Anywhere you listen to it, you'll be able to find it. So that's called Grammar Minute. Where can people follow you if they want to follow you online, if they want to follow you on social media? Where can they go?
Yeah, so Instagram is my most active platform, and it's L Smyth Books. And as you've already said, that's Smith with a Y, L Smyth Books. And then I also have laurensmythbooks.com. I have a newsletter I send out where I talk about kind of my writing process, give some updates from what's going on in the writing world, and all those types of things. So those are the two best platforms for me.
All right, perfect. For anybody that wants to follow us, we are Bookish Introverts Podcast. We're on Instagram. We have a Facebook page. We have a TikTok page. So we post little clips of our podcast on all these different websites. I have an author page, author Brett Nelson, also on Instagram and Facebook. So Lauren and I, we're all over the place. We're just waiting on you to come and find us. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Yeah, come and find us. We are waiting. All right. Well, Lauren, I appreciate you so much coming on. You have been such a pleasure to talk to. Any parting words before we get off here?
Oh, I would just say thank you so much for having me. And, thank you for being in the Christian fiction sphere as well, because we need more people doing that.
Especially in today's world, we really need more Christian fiction out there. Yeah. If we're going to escape into something, it may as well be something that edifies your mind and your spirit. So absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, listeners, we thank you guys. We've got a whole bunch of stuff that's coming up in 2026. So just stick around and go on the journey with us. So we will talk to you all next time. Lauren, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Bookish Introverts Podcast, where together we explore the worlds within the pages. Until next time, stay bookish.